I know we have Bono coming up, but we actually have a rock star here. This is a rock star of enterprise software.
My dream.
Your guitar, come on. I got to tell you a story. 2 years ago, a story hits my desk at Forbes about this company that nobody's ever heard of. Just raised 70 million bucks, 50 million in sales, 30 million in cash flow. Had never been written about, mentioned, sitting in Provo, Utah. It's an amazing story. Now, you guys just raised another $150 million, and it all started in your basement. So tell us a little bit, run us a little bit of the history. How do you start a company that's become, as dominant as you guys in your basement?
So first, pretty soon we're going to be talking about real money. Yeah, we hung out in our basement for a long time. I mean, enterprise software isn't sexy, and there's no real silver bullets. We signed up one customer at a time. We were bootstrapped. We decided early on we weren't going to raise capital. We subscribed to this model that we nail it before we scale it. And from a nailing standpoint, it took us a little while to nail it. And that's a good thing, because that means someone else won't.
It was 10 years before you took investment, right?
Yeah, it was 10 years. I think we nailed our model after about 5 years. We focused on the academic market, which they don't have a lot of money. They're extremely demanding, and they're not your typical business model customer. But something crazy happened, and it spread through academia and spread through corporate world. And 10 years in, we said, hey, look, maybe there's some strategic advantage from some investors.
No, it's true. Now, part of the brilliance was that you were giving, you had as your customers MBAs and academics, and then they go and get jobs, and they bring and say, I want to use, I want to use Qualtrics. And so basically, they were your evangelists. Was that part of the plan, or was that a lucky break?
So I think originally targeting the academic market, this was before LinkedIn, so we could actually look online and see who the academics were that needed to buy our product. And that was very strategic. The hope was that they would share our product with students, and it would actually spread virally through an organization and go with them. I think it's very hard to predict virality. It's almost impossible. And I think we're smart business people. I think we're great entrepreneurs, but there's always a little bit of luck involved. If 2002 you're sitting in a basement and data's going to be at the forefront of where it is, and anyone says it's not, is crazy, or they would have put all their money into Facebook.
Now, when we were literally in the basement in that, I mean, Hewlett Packard had the garage. Like, how many people did you have in your basement for how long?
We had 20 people in our basement sharing my parents' bathroom, which is kind of awkward. So on garbage day, we had to have everyone park out front because the garbage trucks couldn't get in.
My favorite story from the Forbes story we ran is about how you guys had so many servers crammed in your basement, you were running out of juice, so you had to get a generator, and you had to somehow put a generator in your basement, and you had to hire a crane?
Yeah, so my father's pretty scrappy. He's a scientist, and he bought this 5,000-pound generator on eBay, and it shows up to the house from a truck, and we went out and rented a forklift. And actually, I have a little brother who was pretty young at the time who decided to go and take that forklift through the backyard and put it in the back, but it got onto the grass and just sunk down to the axles. And so we ruined the lawn. And about that time, it was like, hey, maybe we need to get out of the basement.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, also from the Forbes story, that the only way you were able to get out of the basement is your dad basically went away. He wanted you guys to stay basically in the house and scrappy.
Yes, so there was a rule at the university, because he was a professor, that he couldn't have an office outside of his home. So he bought a big house with a huge basement and kind of solved that. And so when he went away, he took a Fulbright to Moldova for a year, and our team leased an office space and started really scaling, and he never really quite engaged the same way after that.
So you guys, profitable, you're operating for 10 years, you're making a lot of money. Why then go and raise money? I mean, you're kind of, you're in a sweet spot. You don't have to answer to anybody, plenty of cash flow. Why go and take the venture money?
Yeah, so venture capitalists have been reaching out to us for 3 or 4 years, and the answer was always no, because that's the deal my father and I had. Go do whatever you want, go blow this business up, take it as big as you want, but just don't raise capital. But there came a point where I think coming out of the recession, our business, which I was really scared about, actually skyrocketed. It took off. The old way of doing research and collecting data was outsourcing to big firms. And what happened is the bets organizations were making actually became really critical, and they needed to be right, and they could not be wrong. And their budgets were cut. So that's where people said, hey, I can start gathering research and collecting data on my own. And coming out of that recession, I realized, hey, wait, this could be a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. And we ended up going through the process and ended up taking funding from Sequoia and Excel, and it's been phenomenal.
But you had a dilemma there because you also had a as I remember, you had a buyout offer for $500 million.
Yeah,
it's a 100% owned family company. So you guys have a $500 million cash sitting on the table.
Yeah, it is. It's a dilemma to some people, I think. But when we went through this process, it's actually the ultimate litmus test on whether you want to do something great or you want to go and run. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do next. It would have been
you're 36, right? So
yeah, well, at the time I was a little younger. So I'd waited my whole life working from college to get to the point where Qualtrics was actually something people had heard of. And we finally had a team, and we had resources. We had people that could back us. And it got really weird because it was like, wait, if this is everything I wanted, why would we get out now, or why wouldn't we bet on this? And it became actually pretty interesting because I felt like we've never done any marketing. I've never done an interview. Actually, the Forbes interview was the very first interview I'd ever done. Never done a PR campaign.
Which is surprising because you're very shy, as we see.
Yeah, I'm not very good with people. So, but it really came down to, hey, look, do you want to do something great and be around for a very long time? And every year that we waited from taking venture capital, I think our valuation went up, $75 to $100 million. And since then, we've tripled the company. And if you look at having very little revenue outside the US and all of that, that's what we saw.
So you raised $70 million. 2 years later, you raised another 150. Why not go public? Because you kind of have that correct arc. You're making money. You took your venture money. You grew. It seems like a natural point this year to do an IPO. Why take more venture money?
So when we looked in 2012 and we looked at the opportunities that were in front of us, the first thing we looked at was, hey, look, we have 4 really good opportunities. We can get out. We can do nothing, which is a great luxury. We can take venture capital money, or we can take private equity money, or investment banks. In 2012, we asked the question, by going down the road with Sequoia and Excel, is there anything that we're limiting? So are we cutting off one of these fingers, basically? Because options are really good. And I think way too many entrepreneurs, too early, limit their options. And we didn't want to make a decision that was going to limit our options. And 2 years later, which was last month, when we announced another fundraising round, we still had 5 options. We actually grew an option, which was, hey, we could go public, right? And I think we made a decision that's going to allow us to have 5 options, hopefully 2 or 3 years now. If I can look back after the second deal, and say the same thing I can with the first deal, that's all you can hope for.
Well, a lot of that money's you're going global now. I know you have a big operation here in Dublin. You kind of, again, you have options galore, but how do you keep that? Part of what is so intriguing about your company is you've always had this great culture. When we did the story, and just 2 years ago, you still had this culture where if the phone rang, and it rang more than 3 times, a light would go on, and somebody, even yourself, would have to pick it up. How do you, as you scale, keep that entrepreneurial culture that's gotten you where you are right now?
It's the $10 billion question, right? I mean, we're now
Sounds like it's a $150 million question.
Yeah, whatever it is. But we're 600 employees. I mean, we've got 60 employees here in Dublin from 2 years ago when I came to Founders for the first time, right? And said, hey, I love this place, right? So we're going to build an office here. And if you look at it, one of the things we do as a company is we help organizations become data-driven. And then we want to create transparency with that data so we can make business decisions. Well, we need to kind of practice what we preach. So everything we do internally is absolutely transparent. Everyone in my company knows that I'm here right now. Everyone knows my checklist of things I was doing this week, and everyone can see everyone else's.
Your expense account?
My expenses. Everyone can see where where I expense things. I mean, I had to explain to our company that the Wild Mustang was a restaurant in Provo, right? So the transparency hurts sometimes, right? But reality is it's got to start from the top. And our whole goal as an organization is we want to grow up together and do really hard things. And it's critical that employees, no matter how long you've been there, can emulate or copy the competent people in the organization, not the confident. And that's the culture that we're creating, is these competent, deadly assassins within our organization that are holding it together are the ones we want people following and growing up a lot quicker.
Now, part of what you guys do, I mean, you move fast. We're in an era of quote-unquote big data. You talk about fast data. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
So every organization has a ton of questions. It's amazing. Even like the Web Summit, we're providing the feedback you round through a survey here at the Web Summit, and there's questions people want to know. And organizations have bought into the big data trend, which a lot of times doesn't affect everyone from a terabyte standpoint, but they're lining up around big data. And reality is we're watching them get to the end of it, and they still have the business questions. So we're big proponents of fast data. When we started, we wanted to make sophisticated research simple in the academic world and market research. And we've done that. We made a platform that everyone can access to do research and gather those questions. Then we moved into making sophisticated customer satisfaction simple. So we're powering all the major airlines, and we're doing customer satisfaction for hotels. And now we've gone into making employee reviews and any question you have about your employees simple. There's a huge talent war going on. People spend all this money to get them in the building, and no one's asking enough feedback from their employees. It just doesn't make sense. Well, why? Because the process is so cumbersome. Now it's easy with Qualtrics.
That's it. And everybody here will be asked a Qualtrics question because you guys are doing the feedback for the Web Summit. So,
yeah,
so everyone will get to taste what you're cooking. We're out of time, but thank you. You know, a rock star of entrepreneurs, Ryan Smith. So, thank you.